dashboard. I did one of these quickly myself just to see if we could do it. It's available. We'll share this presentation, so you'll get the link out there. Next month, we're going to have Snowflake sponsor our event. So they're going to buy us dinner and drinks at Clutch Kitchen and Poorhouse. So it's just a few blocks from here. And they're going to show us, how to leverage Snowflake as a cloud data warehouse. And what I want to talk about tonight is why is this significant to us as Tableau developers? So, thank you. Yeah, so why, the title was a little pretentious, but, let's look past that. So if I think back on my career myself, I started in about 93, 94. I was a co-op in college, and I got launched into Lotus 123 on DOS. So that's how far I can date myself. And then we got Windows 3.1 came out, and you still had Lotus, but now it was in a graphical format. And what I'm observing here, or what I'm introspecting about, is the productivity gains that I experienced throughout my career. And that first big bump was, man, it took forever to build a chart. But then you could do WYSIWYG. If anybody remembers WYSIWYG, what you see is what you get. And you could also do macros. So that was a real big deal in the mid to late 90s, being able to do macro. So your productivity shot up a whole bunch. But let's go through the next one. So that's kind of what we're talking about there, doing TQM charts in Lotus 123. And you hit this maybe if you adopted Microsoft Access, or if you did a lot more Excel and more VBA, you could do a lot more productivity. So you experience this big productivity jump. But then in my experience, what tended to happen was that your bosses liked what you did, so now they want to do the same thing times 100. It's either that, so your productivity, you lost the ability to innovate. And then also, for myself, I joined a big bank for several years, and we didn't have as many innovative tools. And so it went from being innovative with small kind of productivity tools to Teradata and Oracle, and okay, everything's been developed. All you can do is read 1,000 lines of code, figure out where the bug is, and that was my analyst work I did. When I left the bank, I started working in Tableau. That was about 2014, and go to the next one. And this is for myself personally. This is when I experienced this big jump again. I had moved away from building charts and visualizations because it was so painful, and you got pegged by being that person that just made charts. But with Tableau, it was fun again. You could do this, and you could do it rapidly, and you could build a whole bunch of things in a very short period of time. The last 2 years, I've been working with a couple of different tools. So, quick show of hands: who you work in Tableau? Do you also do your own data prep and data wrangling? Okay, so about half of us. Does anybody go to the extent where they're going back to the system of record and they're building their own data pipelines? Okay, so this is still applicable. So you need to go to your system of record. You need to pull in a bunch of data. Maybe you're building some kind of a model of some type. It doesn't have to be a fancy model. Salesforce, you might just pull in an opportunity table and try to understand how many opportunities you're having and do some kind of analysis there. But these two particular tools, they're in a class of tools. So Snowflake is a cloud data warehouse. And why that is significantly different than other things like Teradata and Oracle is because it is built for the cloud. They have separated the compute engine from the storage. So now if you have a terabyte of data, it costs you about $24 a month to store the data, but you pay $0 for the compute engine. If you're not using that engine, you're not actively engaged in running your queries, you don't pay anything for the computer that runs it. Whereas historically, your company would have to buy thousands or millions of dollars of hardware in order to have it there, to have the capacity ready for when you needed it. With the advent of the cloud platforms like Google Cloud Platform, Amazon Web Services, Azure, these other different cloud platforms, they have that bank of capacity there all the time. So a company like Snowflake can build their system to leverage that capacity only when you need it, and they pass along that savings to you. So if you need the capacity, if you need a small computer to run a small visualization for 5 minutes, you got that. If you were doing something very complex and you need the equivalent of a supercomputer, and it is linear, the cost is linear, so you pay more for the computing power. But you have that available to you, and you have it available to you as an analyst. You don't have to be a programmer to get out there and look at these tools. So that's the cloud data warehouse piece of it. So that's just your database. There still are going to be other kinds of tools that you want to leverage. Alteryx, I'm using one called Matillion, and these are your ETL tools. you can write, if you're very good at SQL, you could write a script and import everything using some of these native tools to Snowflake. But if you like using boxes and arrows and drawing a component, say, okay, import this data in from this thing, you select these columns, do this transform, aggregate, all this kind of stuff. You can do that with tools like Matillion or Alteryx, or there's a whole host of others. And the real difference is that the cost is low enough so that a hobbyist, anybody in this room on a Saturday morning, could jump out to AWS, you could launch one of these servers, connect to it, connect to Snowflake, and for like dollars per hour, you could do your own investigation into these tools. That's a huge, for me personally, that's what excites me, because previously, no one had a chance. The barrier to entry was so high, no one here was going to start their own Teradata server. If you could even get a phone call from a salesperson to begin with, right? Because you don't have millions of dollars to spend on this equipment. So what I'm suggesting here is that anybody else who experienced this interesting productivity gain in the mid-90s with desktop computing, we're now seeing it again with cloud services. And for us personally, we're experiencing this in 2019 because about 7-8 years ago, these cloud platforms came along. And they started building all these tools so that other companies could build tools like Snowflake and Matillion. Let's go on to the next one. Now, why is all this really relevant to this room in particular? The Tableau Developer is the, I don't know, I haven't really planned out any kind of thing to talk about this, but the Tableau Developer is uniquely positioned because what we do is seen. Everything else is the top of the iceberg. When you put those dashboards out there and you show them to their executive, they're seeing the Tableau dashboard. The executive has no appreciation for the hundreds of hours that you put into building the data pipeline, doing the data wrangling, talking to, getting access to data. They have no appreciation for that. So the Tableau is the 20%, everything else is the 80% beneath the surface. So for us as Tableau developers, go to the next one. This is where you can create your value in the Tableau dashboard, but you still need to have all these things done. And since you're the one that is showing the showcase, you're also the one who knows, well, this particular calculation, like the one you did tonight, the table calculation. Now, that kind of calculation is done well in Tableau. But there are other kinds of calculations that maybe you want to have done on the database. Maybe it's very intensive and you want to push that back to the database. And the Tableau developer is the one who understands that distinction between, does this belong in Tableau? Does it belong in the database? Or should it be a different system of record where I'm pulling it from? So that's the distinction. Your database engineer is not going to know that. They're not going to have an appreciation for the nuances of Tableau. So this room is really particularly suited to take advantage of this kind of change in the industry where these cloud data tools are now available, and having the knowledge that you have, you can lead the way into adopting these other tools and getting more productivity. Honestly, this presentation is kind of to encourage you in terms of your career. Now that you've understood Tableau, adopt some of these other tools, and you'll understand the whole thing end to end. It's a very empowering feeling to be able to own everything from the system of record through the data warehouse all the way into the Tableau visualization. It's pretty powerful. So it's not just Matillion and Snowflake. These are the two that I've been working in for the last couple of years. There's also Data Prep. There's also Alteryx. Snowflake is also not the only cloud data warehouse. BigQuery is another example. So we want to be even-handed about talking about different tools. And again, why is this important to us? Low barriers to entry. There's no initial capital cost. You don't have to buy any servers. You only pay for what you use. It's easy to use. You don't have to know any kind of programming or scripting in order to access all these different capabilities. SQL is always helpful. Who's very comfortable in SQL? Okay, so about half. SQL is always very helpful. You can get away in Tableau without understanding SQL, but it is still going to be very helpful. No hardware to manage, and as long as you have a little bit of understanding about AWS, then you can jump out to AWS, follow some instructions, launch a server, and then you're good to go. As long as you remember to turn off your server. So you start a server, that's when you start getting charged. Remember to turn off your server. Because at $3 an hour, I guess that adds up pretty fast. That's $3,000 a month or something. Okay. We'll have some links here. I'm very interested in learning about what other people are doing in terms of their data pipelines. You know, maybe not everybody is going from system of record to building a data warehouse and building a dimensional model and then in Tableau. Maybe you're pulling, I know one gentleman here is pulling from the system, but going straight into Tableau or Alteryx with Tableau. If you'd like to present on that, I'd be very excited to hear about other kind of data pipelines and how you're approaching it, different tools that you're using. So let me know and we'll get you on the queue to present. Some more links. And yep. And this is us next month. So Snowflake and the company I work with, Tam Group, buying us drinks and dinner, snacks and things at a Clutch House. So it's just around the stadium. Formerly this was called the Draft House. Yeah. So Tableau did a presentation with a company called Isimo about a year ago at this spot. So it's the same spot there. I think that. And okay, October, November, what I'm really hoping to do is to line up a longer day workshop. Again, this is for the Tableau folks here. But it'll be a workshop, again, sponsored by Snowflake and Matillion, probably Tableau as well. If you're really interested in learning how to do data pipelines, and I say this almost out of selfish reasons. This is a very hot topic, and very few people have the skills to master this particular stack. Or going from Tableau to ETL plus the Cloud Data Warehouse. So you're going to become very popular with a lot of employers if you can master this full stack. So join us at the workshop October, November, and more to come on that. So hopefully that was inspiring, motivational, give you some different ideas about things you can add to your technology stack. Any questions? All right. Well, if you do, feel free to reach out. You can respond back to the email for the registration, and that'll be fine.